I'm trapped, SOS. The dust still hung in the air, illuminated by the beam of my headlamp. It looked like snowfall in reverse, the particles lazily ascending instead of falling. The smell was acrid, like disturbed earth and something else, older, something mineral. Elias. Sarah's voice was thin, laced with a fear I recognized all too well. It mirrored the fear I felt churning in my own gut. I'm here, I replied, my voice raspy. I coughed, trying to clear the grit from my throat. You okay? I think so. Just a few scrapes. What the hell was that? What the hell indeed? A tremor. A big one. Big enough to bring down a section of the roof. Big enough to seal off the passage we'd just come through. We were deep in the Blackwood system, mapping a section that hadn't seen light or any living soul as far as I knew in millennia. Now, it looked like we were going to be intimately acquainted with its darkness. I shone my lamp around, the beam dancing across the newly formed wall of rock and rubble. It was solid, impenetrable. Cave in, I said, stating the obvious. Looks like our way back is blocked. Sarah moved closer, her own headlamp joining mine. Her face was pale, smudged with dirt. Even in the dim light, I could see the apprehension in her eyes, the question she was afraid to ask. So we're trapped, she finally whispered. I hated that word, trapped. It was a trigger, a reminder of another time, another cave, other faces that were now just memories, cold and distant. We're delayed, I corrected, forcing a note of optimism into my voice that I didn't feel. We have another exit planned. It's just going to take us a little longer to get there. I didn't tell her that the other exit was miles away, through uncharted territory. I didn't tell her that our comms were probably down, thanks to the tremor. And I definitely didn't tell her about the growing knot of dread in my stomach, a feeling that this wasn't just a simple cave-in. Check your gear, I instructed, turning away from the blocked passage. Let's see what we've got. We had enough food for 3 days, maybe 4 if we stretched it. Water was more plentiful, a small stream ran through this section of the cave. Our ropes and climbing gear were intact, thankfully. But the radio was dead. The tremor had rattled something loose. Damn it, I muttered, fiddling with the device. Ben's going to be worried sick. Ben Carter was our surface contact, a local caver who knew the Blackwood system almost as well as I did. He was supposed to check in with us every 6 hours. Now we were on our own. We'll be fine, I said, more to myself than to Sarah. We just need to stay calm and think things through. Easier said than done. We started walking, heading deeper into the uncharted section of the cave. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something ancient and indefinable. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the drip, drip, drip of water and the sound of our own breathing. It was then that I heard it, a whisper, faint, almost imperceptible, like the rustling of leaves in a distant forest. Did you hear that? I asked, stopping abruptly. Sarah frowned. Hear what? Just the water dripping. No, it sounded like someone whispering. She looked at me skeptically. Elias, are you sure you're okay? Maybe you hit your head during the cave-in. I shook my head. I knew what I heard, but I wasn't about to argue with her, not yet. Probably just the cave playing tricks on me, I said, forcing a smile. Let's keep moving. But the whisper, it stayed with me, a nagging presence in the back of my mind. We continued our trek, the tunnels twisting and turning, leading us deeper into the earth's embrace. The formations were incredible, towering stalactites and stalagmites, delicate flowstone curtains, bizarre rock formations that looked like petrified creatures. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that something was observing us from the shadows. That night, we made camp in a relatively dry alcove. We ate a meager dinner of granola bars and dried fruit, rationing our supplies carefully. Sarah was quiet, her eyes darting nervously around the cavern. I could see the fear etched on her face. Try to get some sleep, I told her. We have a long day ahead of us. She nodded, but I knew she wouldn't sleep. Neither would I. As I lay there in the darkness, the whisper returned. This time it was clearer, louder. Elias, it sounded like my name, spoken in a voice that was both familiar and alien. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest. Who's there? I called out, my voice trembling slightly. Silence. Then the whisper again. You shouldn't have come here, Elias. Who are you? I demanded. What do you want? You know what I want. The voice seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was inside my head, resonating in my bones. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block it out. This was impossible. I was imagining things. Stress, lack of sleep, the trauma of the cave-in, it was all getting to me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just my imagination. Something was in the cave with us, and it knew my name. The next day was worse. The voice grew stronger, more persistent. It taunted me, whispered secrets, dredged up memories I had tried to bury. It knew about the previous expedition, the one that had gone wrong, the one where I had lost my team. It knew about the guilt I carried, the nightmares that haunted my sleep. They died because of you, Elias. You led them to their doom. You are responsible. I tried to ignore it, to focus on the task at hand, but it was impossible. The voice was relentless, chipping away at my sanity. Sarah noticed my distress. Elias, what's wrong? She asked, her voice filled with concern. You're acting strange. I'm fine, I snapped, perhaps a little too harshly, just tired. I couldn't tell her about the voice. She would think I was crazy, and maybe I was. We stumbled upon a cavern larger than the others. In the center was a lake of still water, as dark as ink. Strange formations surrounded the lake. They looked like figures carved from the rock. Humanoid shapes, their faces contorted in silent screams. What are these? Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe and fear. I didn't know, but they filled me with a sense of unease, a feeling that we had stumbled into something ancient and evil. As we walked around the lake, the voice intensified. They are waiting, Elias, waiting for you to join them, waiting for you to pay for your sins. I stopped, my head throbbing. I felt like I was going to pass out. Elias, Sarah cried, grabbing my arm. What is it? What's happening? I couldn't speak. I could only point to the figures around the lake. They're calling to me. I managed to croak. They want me to join them. Sarah looked at me like I was insane. Elias, there's nothing there, she said, shaking her head. You're hallucinating. We need to get out of here. She was right. We needed to leave, but the voice was too strong, the pull too powerful. I felt like I was being drawn towards the lake, towards the waiting figures. Suddenly, there was a tremor. Not as strong as the first one, but enough to shake the cavern. The figures around the lake began to crumble, falling into the dark water with a splash. The voice screamed in my head. No, not yet. The tremor subsided, leaving the cavern in silence. The figures were gone, swallowed by the lake. I gasped for air, my body trembling. The voice was still there, but it was weaker, diminished. Sarah pulled me away from the lake, dragging me towards the tunnel on the far side of the cavern. Come on, Elias, she said, her voice urgent. We have to go. Now I stumbled after her, my mind reeling. What had just happened? Was it real, or was I truly losing my mind? We pressed on, moving as quickly as we could through the twisting tunnels. The voice was still there, whispering in the back of my mind, but it was fainter, more distant. We found a narrow passage, barely wide enough to squeeze through. It was a tight fit, the rock pressing against us on all sides. This could be it, I said, my voice hoarse. This could lead to another exit. Sarah looked doubtful. It looks dangerous. We don't have a choice, I said. We're running out of time. I led the way, inching forward through the narrow passage. The air was thick and stale, the silence absolute. I could feel the weight of the earth pressing down on me, suffocating me. Then I heard a scraping sound, a faint, rhythmic scraping. It was coming from ahead of us, from deeper inside the passage. I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest. Did you hear that? I whispered. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide with fear. What is it? She asked. I didn't know, but I had a bad feeling about it. I pulled out my knife, gripping it tightly in my hand. We continued forward, inching our way through the narrow passage. The scraping sound grew louder, closer. Then we saw it, a figure, standing in the passage ahead of us. It was tall and gaunt, its skin stretched tightly over its bones. Its eyes were black and empty, like hollow sockets. It was holding a rock in its hand, scraping it against the wall of the passage. The figure turned to face us, its head cocked to one side. You shouldn't be here, it rasped, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. I raised my knife, ready to defend ourselves. Who are you? I demanded. The figure smiled, a ghastly, unsettling smile. I am the guardian, it said, and you are trespassing. It lunged at us, its hand outstretched, its fingers like claws. I screamed and lunged forward, knocking the figure down with the hilt of my knife. He was surprisingly frail, collapsing like a puppet with cut strings. Sarah and I scrambled over him, shoving our way further into the passage. Behind us we heard the creature scream and the sound of rocks tumbling. We didn't stop until we were out of the passage and into a small cavern. The passage behind us had collapsed, sealing itself with rock. We were alone. What was that thing? Sarah asked, breathless. I don't know, I said, shaking my head, but I don't want to find out. The cavern was small and damp. There was no way out. We're trapped, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. I looked around, desperate. There had to be a way out. Then I saw it, a crack in the wall, barely visible but definitely there. I rushed over to it, examining it closely. It was narrow, but it seemed to lead somewhere. "Sarah, help me," I said. "Let's see if we can widen this crack." We worked together, using our knives and our hands to chip away at the rock. It was slow, painstaking work, but we made progress. Finally, the crack was wide enough for me to squeeze through. I took a deep breath and crawled into the darkness. The crack led to another passage. This one was wider but still narrow. It sloped upwards towards the surface. "Sarah, I think this is it," I shouted. "I think we're going to make it." I crawled forward, my heart pounding with hope. The passage grew wider. The air grew fresher. I could see a faint light at the end of the tunnel. I reached the end of the passage and emerged into the daylight. I was standing on the side of a mountain overlooking a valley. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I turned back to the passage, waiting for Sarah to emerge, but she didn't come. "Sarah," I called out. "Sarah, where are you?" Silence. I crawled back into the passage, calling her name. I found her lying on the ground, unconscious. The creature from before stood over her. I lunged at the creature, tackling it to the ground. We wrestled, our bodies covered in mud and blood. I managed to grab my knife and plunge it into the creature's chest. It gasped and fell to the ground, dead. I picked Sarah up in my arms and carried her out of the cave. I carried her down the mountain toward civilization. We were rescued a few hours later. Sarah was taken to the hospital where she recovered fully. I was never the same. The voice was gone, but the memory of it lingered. I could still hear it in my dreams, whispering my name, taunting me with my past. I never went back into the Blackwood cave system. I never wanted to see its darkness again. A few weeks after the rescue, I received a package in the mail. It was a small, smooth stone. It was cold to the touch, and it seemed to radiate a strange energy. I knew where it came from. I knew what it was. It was a piece of the cave, a piece of the darkness. I threw it into the fire, but it didn't burn. It just sat there, glowing faintly in the flames. I knew that the cave would never truly let me go. It would always be a part of me, a dark, haunting part. A year later, I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see the cave. I hear the whispers. I feel the cold, damp air on my skin. I try to tell myself it was just a hallucination, a product of stress and exhaustion. But I know it was more than that. I know there was something else in the cave with us. Something ancient and evil. Sarah is doing better. She's back in school studying geology. She doesn't like to talk about what happened. I don't blame her. I still see Ben sometimes. He's grateful that we made it out alive. But I can see the sadness in his eyes. He knows that something has changed. He knows that I'm not the same person I was before. Sometimes I think I can still hear the whispers. Faint, almost imperceptible, like the rustling of leaves in a distant forest. I try to ignore them, but they're always there. A constant reminder of what happened in the cave. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever be able to escape the darkness. All I know is that I'm trapped. I keep a journal now. It helps to write things down, to try and make sense of it all. But sometimes when I read back over my entries, I notice something strange. Words that I don't remember writing. Phrases that don't sound like me. Things like "it's waiting for you," "come back," "join us." The darkness is calling. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what's happening to me. I'm afraid of what's waiting for me in the darkness. Entry from Sarah Chen's journal, dated 6 months after the incident. I haven't spoken to Elias in months. Ben told me he's not doing well. He's withdrawn, paranoid. He barely leaves his house. I tried to visit him, but he wouldn't open the door. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined it all. The whispers, the figures, the creature. Maybe it was just the stress, the darkness, the lack of sleep. But then I remember the look in Elias's eyes, the terror, the conviction. He believed it. He truly believed that something was in the cave with us. And sometimes late at night when I'm lying in bed, I think I can hear it too. A faint whisper carried on the wind. "You shouldn't have left him. He's waiting for you. Come back. Join us." I don't know what it means. I don't know if it's real. But I can't shake the feeling that something is still out there. Something in the darkness, waiting.